Today is the second installment on the Demystifying the Industrial Space panel, brought to you by the Northeast and the West regions of NOBCChE. And so we're really pleased to be able to take advantage of one of the positives of COVID is that we've learned how and we take advantage of these electronic tools that allow us to meet irrespective of our location. So even though we're spread out all across the country, we're able to come together. And for those of us who often work in environments where we don't get to see a familiar face very often, this is a wonderful advantage that we have now. And so I want to thank all of you for making time to join us, and we're pleased to be able to bring you this panel today on the issue of making transitions between positions or transitions from another industry, academia, or government into an industrial position. And so today we have four wonderful panelists, illustrious panelists to discuss this important topic with us. And so I'll begin by introducing two of our panelists for you today. I want to let you know that unfortunately Dr. Travis White is not going to be able to join us, even though he was on the flyer. And he's at the last minute had an unexpected interruption, so he's not able to join us, but we're happy to welcome Dr. James Fells. Dr. James Fells Sr. Is an associate principal scientist in the computational structural chemistry group at Merck and Company. Dr. Fells is originally from Little Rock, Arkansas. He earned his BS in chemistry at the University of Memphis in 2004, and then completed his MS in organic chemistry at the University of Memphis in 2008. He was the first African American to attain a doctorate in chemistry from the University of Memphis in 2009, so he was working hard. His dissertation was supported by an American Heart predoctoral fellowship to study the role of lysophosphatidic acid in cardiovascular disease. Prior to joining Merck and Company in 2014, as a senior scientist, Dr. Fells did his postdoctoral training at the University of Tennessee Health Sciences Center, where he earned an American Cancer Society postdoctoral fellowship to develop small molecules targeting the lysophosphatidic acid signaling axis. Dr. Fells has received several accolades during his academic training, including numerous travel awards from FASIB, Mark Postdoctoral Training Development and Enrichment Award, along with the Postdoctoral Scholar Research Integrity Ambassador Award from the Department of Health and Human Services Office of Research and Integrity. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Fells. Dr. Kevin Eleka is a senior manager in business development, competitive intelligence at Bristol Myers Squibb. In his role, he helps assess the competitive environment, aiding assessment of business development opportunities, and closely tracks emerging scientific data and financial disclosures to inform business development activities for Bristol Myers Squibb. In previous roles, Dr. Eleka helped to develop analytical methods to support chemical processes for the manufacture of small molecules and drug substances. So he can talk to us about transitioning from the bench to the office. Dr. Eleka is also passionate about STEM advocacy. He's an active member in several organizations whose aims are to bridge the gap between science and marginalized communities by highlighting the importance and value of contributions that Black science brings to such communities. He serves on the board of NOBCCchE. He's our parliamentarian. And as a board member, he partners with organizational leaders to develop strategies to create more diverse, inclusive, and equitable scientific workforce. He's a frequent speaker and writer on DEI issues in the STEM field. He earned his bachelor's from St. John's University and a doctoral degree in chemistry from the University of Michigan. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Aleka.
Thank you.
And so now I want to introduce to you the regional student representative for the Northeast region for NOBCChE, Ms. Carissa Hunter, and she's going to continue our introductions and begin our questioning. Take it away, Carissa.
Thanks, Sharon. Good afternoon, everyone. So I have the pleasure of introducing Lindsay Jones. Lindsay Jones is currently working at Bristol Myers Squibb as an associate research scientist in the oral product development department. In this role, she contributes to formulation development for oral drug products to support toxicology and clinical studies at different development stages. Also, she works on process development, scale up, and technical transfer for oral drug products. While Lindsay states that her background is a bit unorthodox for someone in her current position, she is a perfect person to discuss career transitions, which is great for this panel. She obtained her BS in chemical and biomolecular engineering from Georgia Tech and spent the initial years of her career in the oil and gas industry at an oil field service company called Schlumberger, where she interned as a bench chemist. Upon completion of her bachelor's degree, she accepted a full-time position there, but ended up becoming a drilling engineer in integrated project management, working both domestically and internationally in diverse multidisciplinary teams for a little over 3 years, where she gained varied work experience from office-based project planning through scaled-up execution at the rig site. She eventually left the oil and gas industry and was introduced to Bristol Myers Squibb at the 2020 Virtual National NOBCChE Conference Career Fair, where she gained interest in their business. She worked with a few of the BMS representatives and pursued various positions, eventually landing her current position as a research scientist. Welcome, Lindsay.
Thank you.
Being here. Also, I will introduce Dr. Victoria Parker. Dr. Parker was raised in Newport News, Virginia. In 2013, she earned a BS in chemistry, pre-medicine from Norfolk State University, where she was a recipient of the DNI-MAS Full Ride Scholarship. In 2019, she earned her PhD in pharmacy, medicinal and natural products chemistry at the University of Iowa. Soon after, she began her postdoctoral training at Harvard Medical School and the Massachusetts General Hospital in medicinal chemistry and neuroimaging. She is now an associate manager at Regeneron Pharmaceuticals, where she manages the non-cytotoxic antibody drug conjugate programs. She serves her community as the national secretary of NOBCChE, mentoring students, serving on panels, helping to establish a STEM college scholarship competition for junior high school students, and advocating for diversity in STEM. In 2016, she was an Aspen Washington Fellow, where she advocated for increased funding for NIH biomedical research in historically Black colleges and universities. Throughout her career, she has received numerous awards, including the 2021 NOBCChE Presidential Award and 1,000 Inspiring Black Chemists of America in Cell Press. She presented her work at over 25 conferences, served on various committees, completed an industry internship with SC Johnson, and served as a consulting associate for the Harvard Consulting Group. Lastly, she is a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Welcome, Victoria. And so I guess I will start off the panel asking you all this first question. So since this panel is focused on career changes and transitions, please describe the position you held before this one and what motivated you to change positions. And anyone can start.
I guess.
Go for it.
Oh, Lindsay, you can. So previously I was a postdoc out in Boston, and I enjoyed it. It was more so of the drug development side that made me want to go into getting my postdoc in the first place. I had an option of doing a postdoc or doing industry, but I decided for me to get into the industry that I really, really was very passionate about in pharma, I felt this would be the great and best move for me. And so I had that opportunity to make that transition because I was recruited by Regeneron by a friend that I met at the University of Iowa during my studies. And he kind of mentioned a little bit about how you get to merge the love of science of what you're doing with also that passion for driving it forward in clinical trials, which is something I was interested in. And so it was a big leap because I had never really been away from the bench for too long, but I kind of had that exposure during COVID which it actually turned out great for me just because the lab shut down for a little bit and I had a chance to see what it was like to do science without having to be at the bench to do it. And when the position opened up, I said, let's go. I'm ready. I'm ready to be in industry. And it's been great ever since. So
Nice. So for me, it was like I said, I used to be a drilling engineer in oil and gas, and though the engineering and the technical aspects of it were quite interesting, I really enjoyed those. I was doing a lot of business things like legal, procurement, logistics, project budgeting and scheduling, and all those things that weren't like science or engineering. And so I felt like I kind of missed those. So when I had the opportunity to leave oil and gas, and I took off a year just because, like I said, I was working internationally and domestically, and it was very unstable, I guess, with all the traveling that I had to do. So I wanted to just take a year off just to decompress, realize what I wanted to do. And then, at the start of 2020, let's get into that job hunt. And then COVID was like, yeah, you thought. So instead of like, most companies were on like a hiring freeze at the time. They're trying to keep the employees that they already had, or trying to like, make sure they don't lose as many as they could. I took that time to realize, what do I want to do? And especially in the midst of a pandemic, you realize how important public health is. And I've always been exposed to the medical field just because my mother's been a doctor for the last 40 something years. And so I was always in awe of how much her patients, thought so highly of her, and how she's helped them and saved their lives on so many things. And people come up to us all the time saying like, hey, your mother's the best doctor in Virginia Beach. She saved my life. She caught this cancer before it was able to progress, or, whatever. And I wanted something like that. Probably not, in the form of actually being a doctor, because that's a lot more schooling than I was willing to do. But, I wanted to have an impact on the lives of patients. And so I started looking into pharma. And a lot of people kind of not discouraged me, but they said it's very hard to get into pharma unless you actually have a background in it, or an educational background in it. So I was a bit discouraged, but like I said, I went to the NOBCChE conference, and, started talking to some of the pharmaceutical groups. And I was like, I only have a bachelor's. I feel like a lot of the people at these conferences are like, hi, I'm in my 5th year of my PhD, and my research is about like way over my head. But I was like, I only have a bachelor's and maybe 3 years of experience. Would you have any opportunities for me? And they were like, absolutely. That's the kind of diverse background that we're looking for, that we think that could be really helpful in, these various roles. And I ended up being able to join. So that's kind of been my journey into pharma. That's a bit, like I said, a little unorthodox, but here I am. So it worked.
If you want to take it.
Yeah, sure, I can take it. So my previous role, so out of grad school, working at BMS or in Big Pharma, that was my first job. So I haven't had any other job as an adult, so to speak, after school is over. But I spent 3.5 years in the lab as an analytical chemist, as mentioned before. But during my 3 years or 3.5 years, I've always known that I kind of wanted to pivot. I never knew to what or when. A lot of people talk about going to the business side, but when I started exploring what the business side was, it was much more than what I expected. There's so many jobs, it could go from finance, procurement, project management. So there were so many jobs in the business side. So it took me some time to really hone in on what I wanted to do. I kind of asked myself a few questions like, how I like to work. I think that's where I started. And then from there, I kind of explored the type of jobs that kind of fit for like what I wanted to do in terms of my lifestyle and, work-life balance and things like that. And I landed on competitive intelligence. And the reason why I like where I am now is because I can really, it's not 100% finance or business. I'm still looking at new therapies, new molecules, new disease areas. So I still am thinking very much like a scientist, but really thinking of it from a business impact. And one thing that I'd like to do, or like to tell people, especially those who are early career, is really take time to take time during your development plans, and when you have managers, really have those serious conversations with your manager about your development plan, where you see your career in 5 years, 10 years, and obviously that will change over time, but really, you know, have that roadmap. I think I heard someone say sometime last week was spend as much time as you do planning a vacation as you do to plan your career, because that's like really, really important. So if I leave you with anything, it's just that really take time to think about where you want to be in your career and where you are currently, maybe where you want to be forever, but you know, it's worth really thinking about what that looks like for you.
Could I ask a follow-up before the last person answers?
Yep.
When you said explore, what did you mean, Kevin? What does explore consist of?
Explore, sorry, I forgot what I said.
You were exploring the different kinds of jobs.
Okay, gotcha.
For
Oh
the
yeah, so
pivot. So I just wondered, what did that consist of?
okay, good question. So talking to people, meeting people, networking doesn't end when you start your first job or start your job. For me, it actually ramped up. I did more networking after I started my job than before. So I really tapped into a lot of organizations within my company, a lot of our employee resource groups, and a lot of the extracurricular activities. I got a good chance to meet people across the industry, across the company, and just speaking to them, asking them what they do, how they got there, what their day-to-day like, and you know, and kind of picking people's brains. So that's really, and then going on our careers website and just reading job descriptions and understanding what specific roles look like.
So I'll go, but that's the downside of going last. It's like, okay, what will be left for me to say? So I can say this, that I did a 5-year postdoc, and then during my postdoc, I had to decide if I wanted to go on the academic route. So I actually was applying for faculty positions and applying for industry positions. And what was enticing about one versus the other, I think, you know, oh, I'm going to have my lab. And like Lindsay was saying, like, oh, I'm going to have my lab. It's going to be Dr. Fales' lab. You think about how you're going to, like, what you're going to work on. And then say industry, will I lose this other aspect? And maybe I won't have this full autonomy. So those were basically decisions that I had to think about. And so part of the recruiting process then was finding out, hey, when you come there, literally the head of our organization at the time sat down. He was like, hey, you're looking at faculty positions. Let me see what your packet looks like, because some of the science and stuff that you still want to do, you can do that. To whether it was having a intern or having a postdoc, I can still push the science, still expect it to publish. Like, oh, really? So a lot of stuff that I don't know how I thought this, but a lot of stuff that I thought that would happen in the industry wasn't what would happen. But to piggyback off of actually Kevin's answer and Sharon's question, in terms of like, once you get in, one of the things definitely I tell the interns, but I got a chance to do myself, was once you're on the other side of the gate, you're on the other side of the gate in terms of like seeing what all is going on, but you're also in that system to where it's like, I don't really do that role. I've had opportunity in the 8 years, Sharon, when you were saying, like, start saying when somebody graduates, like, oh no, don't say the year. But in the 8 years that I've been here, I've actually had a chance to do like rotations in other divisions. And so not just talking to people about seeing what's going on, but when you develop your employee development plan, which Kevin was talking about, they're actually serious about, hey, you want to do this. So I've been able to sit down with folks, not just, again, it can be hard sometimes depending on your personality and other things, on you actually meeting people. They'll set it up. So I wanted to talk with people within BDNL and see, like, what is it that you do? How does this go on? Especially the bigger, doesn't how big or how small your company is. There are a lot of other parts in the company that you actually will get exposed to. I have found, and Kevin is a good example of it though, I have found that once you actually see like the other roles, they like that you're on that side and you kind of know how some other things function, the other functional areas, so you can do that. And I know we'll talk about some other questions, but when you hear from other managements, whether it's executive directors and CEOs, part of them getting that position was learning how other roles and stuff function. So they did have to go within other areas in the group. And so some people don't just have a straight path to go from this position to that position. They might have to go actually pivot to actually understand the other side of the business before they can actually head and be even higher ranking than that.
Thank you. Thank you for all of those answers. And so before I ask the next question, I just want to say to everyone in the audience, If you have, in addition to putting your comments in the chat, if you have questions, please be sure to let us know that you have questions so that we can ask them for you, or have you ask them maybe toward the end of the panel session. So be sure to use your chat for that. So the next question that we have, and I want to start, I think with you, Lindsay, because I think you had one of the larger transitions of everybody on the channel, on the panel. And I wondered if you, is there anything that you know now on this side of the transition that you wish you'd known before? And so, you know, part of the reason for asking that is, as people think about how to make transitions more efficiently, maybe knowing about some of the things that people didn't realize until the other side of it will help those listening to you think through all of the pathways that they need to a little better. So is there anything that you can think of that you wish you'd known before about your?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so.
Go
So
ahead.
like I said, when I first kind of was thinking about getting into pharma, I had a lot of naysayers who were saying that, oh, you can't just go straight into pharma from oil and gas. That's not possible. You need to go into like consumer products or maybe chemical processing or something along those lines, get some GMP, you know, experience. And that way, you know, you can buff up your resume and then, you know, be able to go through. But I really learned that, you know, from talking with the BMS reps at the career fair, and in particular, one of the members there was like, hey, you know, I only have a bachelor's in chemical engineering too, and I've been with this company for 17 years. Of course we have a place for you. And, you know, reaching out to them, and like Kevin was saying, like networking is incredibly important. So you just have to be kind of annoying, a little persistent, and just like, you know, reach out to people when you want to talk to them and hear their story. And I guess it was after that, you know, time of talking that it helped me realize that a lot of the things that I was doing in my past industry can be quite applicable to my role now. And my goal during the entire like interview marathon process that it took for me to get to this position was making sure that I made sure those skills were transferable. The skills that I did have, the soft skills that I had, of course, are going to be transferable, but even some of the more technical things. You know, when you're thinking about flow properties, you're thinking about rheologies of like drilling fluids and, you know, things like that. Those could be directly applied to, you know, the liquids, the powder flows and everything like that that you're actually working on in the lab. Show those, like, even though it might be a different from like a field lab to a pharma lab, that those skills can be, you know, transferable to your new role. Also, it was really important for me to know that, you know, experience does not equal intelligence. And I've had a couple instances, you know, in the past where, you know, people are like, oh, you're a rookie, don't talk unless you actually know what you're talking about. And so, you know, that's very discouraging. That'll shut you up really quick. And so being not afraid to ask questions, not afraid to, you know, use the community around you, you know, to really get a better understanding of what you're getting yourself into, what your job entails, or maybe the specific area that you're unfamiliar with. You know, talk to people, and, you know, making sure that I don't get discouraged by those kinds of words that I heard in my past work experience, and having the maturity to kind of like get past it and use that maturity that I've learned from the past to transfer to the new role. I think that's been very important.
Great, thanks. So next, you're nodding your head, Victoria. You want to go next?
Sure. So I guess also just to piggyback off of what Lindsay said, like definitely speaking up, like but also understanding that no matter what role you're going into, it's going to be a learning curve. It's okay to ask questions. They're going to expect you to ask questions, and you know, they hired you because you had a certain expertise or something that they were looking for, a value that you can add on to the team. So not forgetting that aspect. Like for me, I'm still within like the first year of my role, and I'm so fortunate to be a part of a team that's very welcoming and very open for me to ask questions. And I don't feel like nervous about asking the questions. Of course, I'm coming in feeling like, I mean, I should know this, like what? But they also knew coming in for me, immunology wasn't my background. So there was going to be a learning curve where I'm going to have to learn that background, getting to some of this, I guess, more of like the research, the literature, and also merging in my aspect of medicinal chemistry to help drive these antibody drug conjugates forward. So also like just believing in you, like what you're bringing to the team and knowing that you add that value to it.
Go ahead, Jen.
Yeah, I was going because I wasn't going last this time because Victoria now was taking up what I had, so I wasn't going last this time.
Go ahead.
I think it really is important to know, and I saw the question that was posted as well, so I know we'll touch on that. But I think it was really important to know that when they bring you in, they've actually committed to making this investment in you. So they have a development ideal in mind in terms of thinking like, oh, you're supposed to know this. And so coming in, it wasn't like you have to know everything. They understood like you just got here. And for us, I know I make the comment all the time to like new hires. We really like new hires to ask questions because how we sit there and we nod our head, we have no clue of what this actually means. So, but when that new person like can ask it, it's not, well, James, you've been here 8 years. You should know the answer to that. But when somebody else asks that, it's like, oh, that's what it is. Let me write it down. So I think that's one thing is that knowing that, hey, you're expected to ask questions. They're trying to develop you, and they're looking for more of a long range plan. I wasn't sure of that when I came in, so I was really anxious to show like this is what I can do versus sitting back and learning. And so that first year, had I known that first year, hey, they're trying to develop me, then I probably wouldn't have been as much of a whirlwind and everything in terms of like really trying to show, hey, I know this, hey, I'm good at this. It is sit back, learn something, and you're going to the meeting because we know in 3 years you're going to be good. We know in this amount of time, like the faster you get up to speed, great, but you don't have to take off running as soon as you get there. I wish I would have known that on day one as opposed to how I approached it.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. And Kevin?
Yeah, I guess going last, right? I don't really have much to add. I think just one thing I would want to reiterate is the idea that, when you're switching, I guess, industries or switching jobs, switching fields, just keep in mind that when they did bring you in, you had a specific expertise, right? So leverage that because that expertise is probably an aspect of it at least, is what they needed for their team in the current moment. So definitely leverage that, and don't forget that you are an expert in something. And if you aren't, then you wouldn't be there. So.
Right, great, thanks. I'm taking all this advice in because I'll be looking for a job soon, next couple of years. So Alex Gibson asked in the chat, did any of you have a huge hesitation before your pivot? And I guess I want to add to that, do you feel you also made the right choice? James, you're going first.
Yeah, I'm going first. I was trying to think about it. So hesitation, the only hesitation honestly for me was that going from what enticed me about academia versus industry and what scared me was what I was told. So I was worried about job security in the sense of like, man, once they get you here, they might let you go tomorrow type thing. So I was really worried about that from an academic standpoint of being like, hey, I'm going to go in, I'm going to work hard, I'm going to get tenure. That's going to be it. I know that's not it, but that was the plan. Like, hey, I'm going to work hard, get tenure, and I'm going to be set. And then finding out this person like Lindsay had made the comment, you've been here how long, right? Like you get there, you've been working on that project how long? So my hesitation was that in terms of the fallacies I had regarding industry in terms of like, can I actually build a career? So the only thing that made me hesitate was that part. Is if I had known that, then I wouldn't even look the other way. That was my word.
Go ahead, Lindsay.
Oh, okay. For me, it wasn't too much of a hesitation because, like I said, I had a whole year to think about what I wanted to do. I knew that once I got out of oil and gas, I didn't want to go back. So that kind of narrowed it down a bit. But I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do. And I was just fortunate that, again, I had that year to take off and just kind of figure out myself. Well, actually, almost 2 years because of COVID. but to figure out, what's important to me, what are my core values. And when looking for a company to work for next, I had made a list of what my top 10 core values of what I felt were the most important. And when I was introduced to BMS and I went on the website and I looked at their core values, all 6 of them were in my top 10 that I wrote from a year before. So I was like, you know what, this seems like a really good fit. And even during the entire interview process, everybody that I talked to was like 11 different scientists that I interviewed with. I felt afterward, I was like, you know what, even if I don't get this position, that was just delightful. Like everyone was so kind, everyone was so respectful of my time, respectful of their time, very knowledgeable. Like it was just a positive experience all around. And so I felt that, it wouldn't be a matter of like, can I do this job? I was already able to learn all the aspects of oil and gas. I never studied petroleum engineering. I was a chemical engineer. So I can learn an industry. That's not a problem, but will I fit in here? And I think, making sure that you have that feeling of belonging is so important. And I have that so much more so now at this company than I had in the past. So there was literally no hesitation when it came to jumping off into pharma. But that's just for me.
Yeah, I think Lindsay's being a little modest because when she came to the BMS booth, she blew everyone away. So we couldn't stop talking about it. So you were gonna get hired. But anyway, hesitation that I had was learning something new. I think like leaving school, starting a job, you get sort of comfortable. Like I knew what my day-to-day was. I knew how to do my role, very well, kind of like clockwork. But I knew if having to switch, I'll have to like learn something completely new. I'll be like the new person there and like, I'll have to ask questions all the time. I'm not like, I'm okay asking questions, but I do find myself asking a lot and reading much more than I thought I would have to. So that was my only hesitation. But once I reconciled with that, I think, it worked out for me. And I've been in my role now for a couple months now. So far, so good. Only time could tell, I guess.
And for me, no hesitation, only because I really told myself this time around, again, you're transitioning from a postdoc, you're going into pharma, this is what you've been waiting for. I knew during my postdoc, I had opportunities to try different things. Like I did a little bit of consulting. I had a chance to do like a short internship with Genentech a little bit to see what it's like. So by the time I did my interview session with Regeneron, having to speak to so many different people, because it's a long process, but having a chance to kind of listen to them and how are we interacting, getting an idea about the environment within itself of what they would be hiring me for, that pretty much is what sold me. Like I had several interviews going on with other companies, but I felt like with this company, I felt like speaking to them, I knew they would have my back to make sure that I was going to be successful. And I really liked, like, our personalities pretty much gelled. Like they seemed very laid back, very focused, very intelligent, but loved to collaborate. And they were just very passionate about what they were doing. So to me, by the time the whole interview process was over, I was just like, I mean, just like Lindsay said, like, I pray they hire me. Okay. I pray that they do. But even if they don't, please accept my request on LinkedIn, please. And if you have anything else in the future, let me know. But it wouldn't even have been any hard feelings because they were a great group of people to even interact with and get a chance to connect to. So far, so good.
So far, so good. Thank you. So, thank you for the audience. It's given us a lot of good questions. And so we're going to go to an audience question next. So Isaiah Spate asks, did you know anyone in your new job position that helped you with the transition, or did you have to make all the new connections on your own? And is it necessary to have an inside person? Which is an interesting thing, because a lot of people say, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I think people believe that more about industry than about academia, right? That people have that as an idea. So thinking about the fact that who gets to ask question last, we'll go to James first with this one. What do you think about the inside person and how necessary that is?
If you're inside, you're inside. So you're also an inside person. Hopefully that makes sense for you. But like as far as making the transition, once you're in there and making connections, it is a lot easier. I can say that from when I was outside and I was trying to get a job and I didn't know anybody, even though like I got my job from a cold application, like no, like LinkedIn, like, hey, apply for this job. I came back day after Christmas and saw a post and said, hey, I'm applying for that position. And they called me back. I was like, wow, that worked because everyone will tell you exactly what you said, Sharon. But once you get in, as far as like making the connections, that was a lot easier. So it's unbelievable how easier it is because like I mean from being in a cafeteria to going to the gym and meeting folks like you're actually like talking and saying that's what you do over there. And so yes, they will help you also at the same time. If you say I'm interested in this, they will find somebody. And it doesn't mean like somebody at your level. Like the other nice part that I think is really great is that people that are, so let's say executive director, like at a high up position, you'll go sit and talk with them and they want to talk with you. You knock on the door and they'll say, hey, set something up, find the time on my calendar that me and this person can talk. And they want to go talk with you and they'll help you. It won't be like trying to find somebody at the level and see if they can help you. Yeah. So I haven't had a problem on either myself reaching out, but someone reaching out for me and connecting me with the right person now that I'm in there on that side. So it's a lot easier.
All right. Kevin, before you went to BMS, did you know anybody there?
So I didn't know anybody in the department I was going to, but what happened was the department that hired me emailed our department chair because he was an alumni.
Ah,
So when he did that, I kind of emailed him directly, and then made that connection that way. So yeah, so having someone inside, even if it's some sort of a connection, whether it's alumni or you met them at a conference or something, that's always good because what happens is when a position opens, they get thousands of applications, like thousands, and there's no way for HR or talent acquisition to sift through, and they don't. They've told me like they don't look at all the applications. It's impossible for them to. So like the hiring manager or the hiring department would kind of pick and choose. It will go through HR some way somehow, but they pick and choose a handful of the application they want to look at. And if they are familiar with you or if they know that you're applying, which is another thing, once you make that connection, you definitely want to let them know that you're applying. Then they can always bring your resume to the top. So that's where, networking at forums like this, smaller meetings, larger meetings, making sure that you're known, having your LinkedIn profile updated. I think that's really important too, because once you apply for a job, you see that a lot of people viewed your profile because people are looking. It's an easy way to get a sense of who you are really quickly. But in terms of transitioning when you're inside, the department I went to, there was someone there that has previously did the same change for my department. He was no longer there, but how he helped me was he helped me with my interview because he knew the type of question they would ask. I had to do like a case interview. So I like sat with him, sorry, and we went through the case together. So that's how that happened. But always having someone in the position you want to go will always help. It's not impossible to get a job when you don't know someone inside, but it does help for sure, unfortunately.
I completely agree with Kevin. I know for me, I pretty much always knew somebody. And a lot of people that I met was through NOBCChE, through networking at the conference, whether it's being in these different positions on committees or on a national level, locally, just having a chance to collaborate with others to put on events like this. It really helps for you to get yourself out there and learn, I guess, more about what else is out there field-wise to see what you're interested in. But it's also a great way for people to get to know you a little bit better, and they can help to pinpoint you in a direction that you might be interested in, like hire Carissa, you know what I'm saying? Like, hey, yes. So so it's things like this that really helps to get yourself out there. For me, specifically with Regeneron, because I knew of the person that helped to recruit me from Iowa. Like, he was almost like a big brother to me, and we met through NOBCChE, and because there's only but so many of us on campus. So I saw his trajectory on LinkedIn, and I wanted to ask him, hey, this is really interesting. What are you doing now? And he told me about it, and I said, wow, like, there's a department dedicated to this, research program management. What's that? And he told me a little bit about it. And then with my background, they had several positions available. And so he put me in contact with several of their directors for me to get to know them, to kind of get a feel for who would be members of the team. And then they also helped me with my interview process. Like Kevin said, they knew exactly what the team would be looking for, like the department. And so honestly, they helped me to pull things even out of myself that I'm like, oh, I didn't even realize with that soft skill. You're right. I need to highlight that, put it at the front. But then also to walk through aspects of, these are the things in program management that they will be looking for that you didn't even, put in the forefront of all the things you've already done. This is really going to help to highlight a certain subset of skills that they're really, really looking for, that you took from being a grad student and then a postdoc that you didn't even realize that you had. So speaking to them, it kind of also helped me to get my foot in the door. So by the time I presented, a lot of people already assumed I already worked there. And I'm like, no. But I had a chance to talk to or get introduced to several people. So it really helped a lot. And I was able to just get their advice too. And they would help to advocate for you if need be.
Yeah, I guess I'm going last this time. That's fine. So like I said, I did get I did find the company I currently work at through NOBCChE, and I did not know anybody in Jersey or otherwise. So I came into this pretty new. And the reason I was able to find like an inside person is, again, I'm very persistent. When I was talking with one of the representatives, and he was telling me about his story, and I was like, okay, I can kind of relate to that. I only have a bachelor's as well, and in chemical engineering as well, and you're able to excel at this position. I just want to hear your story. And so I had reached out to him because all the reps had left like an email address or a LinkedIn URL or whatever, so that we could connect afterward. And I just kind of bombarded his email and his LinkedIn just to be like, I think I sent a message up first on LinkedIn and he didn't respond to it. And I was like, hi, sorry. I know you probably don't check your LinkedIn very often, but hi, I'm Lindsay. And I was just being very persistent about it because I really wanted to know. And he was like, sure, let's set aside some time on like a Friday. We ended up just chatting for like almost 2 hours. And in the span of that, he was like, okay, these are some of the positions I think you would be great for. And they were all entry-level PhD positions. And I was like, not a PhD. He's like, I know that, but I think you can handle it. I honestly think you would be great for any of these positions. So he ended up sending like employee referrals for a lot of entry-level PhD positions. And it was one of those positions that I applied for. And might have just been serendipitous, a little bit lucky, but the hiring manager had a similar path that I did as well, had a bachelor's in chemical engineering, was in oil and gas for 3 years, a little bit further downstream than I was in drilling, but still oil and gas, missed science. And then, but he said he went back to school to get his PhD from MIT, and then now he's in pharma. So I guess he saw my background in oil and gas and saw like, hey, I've been in that role. I know what it entails, and I think she can handle this. And so I think having a combination of having like an inside person and then having something that you can relate to your hiring manager, it just kind of worked out for me very well. But yeah, if you don't have an inside person, like you kind of have to, it's good to find one, because you want somebody like Victoria was mentioning, someone to advocate for you. And Kevin mentioned, like, they get thousands of applications every single day. HR can't go through all of them. So if you can get just a little bit of a leg up any way you can, that's going to be great for you. So yeah.
Right, great. So I'm gonna update my LinkedIn, highlight my soft skills, network. All right, there's another question from Blessing Ashola in the chat. Says, if one is focused on organic synthesis that are directed at material design, can you still transition into pharmaceutical industry? I guess like if you have no experience, can you transition to a different role? Which I guess
I'll take it.
Okay.
I'm not taking that one. So the answer is yeah. You if you start out with that statement of I'm doing organic synthesis, one misconception that that people have in terms of like what they're looking for is not knowing what they're looking for. I actually, when I first got here, thought, oh, I should I have gotten my PhD in medicinal chemistry? Should I have got my PhD in medicinal chemistry because I know I want to go into industry? Then when I get here and find out none of the medicinal chemists had a PhD in medicinal chemistry. So I said, I dodged that one. What I found out was what they want a person to have if they were on the synthetic, what they were doing medicinal chemistry or what we call process chemistry was to be hardcore organic chemists in terms of synthetic chemists. So if you know your synthetic chemistry, what I'm saying is you're looking at the application and part of what Lindsay was saying, we looking and say, oh, I can do that. I can do that. Not, oh, yes, I do it, but it was material science. You know organic chemistry. So when you're giving your presentation, you would be given about talking about, hey, I can do this. So they like love someone that's done total synthesis, right? Because they want to know, you know, these synthetic routes. Not, oh, I worked on this inhibitor as a graduate student. I did that. They don't care about your inhibitor. They want to know that you know how, if you got in the lab, how what you would do in your lab, notebook versus there. So that's the main thing is you are organic, you do organic synthesis, then you can come into pharma and do organic synthesis in that same manner.
Anybody else have an opinion on that? All right, that was a definitive statement, so we're gonna take that. So again, thank you for our audience. People are doing a great job of giving us lots of questions. And I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Basima Rucker asked, do you suggest a postdoc after the PhD, even if you're sure you're interested in industry and not, playing around with the idea of going into academia at all? And I see you shaking your head very aggressively, James. So you have strong feelings about this. So
Lamont's not.
Get it out,
Lamont
James.
from the
Get it out.
Lamont's on the board is not on the call, so he would tell you otherwise. But I would tell you no. If I didn't have to do a postdoc, Lord knows I wouldn't have done a postdoc. I was trying to find a full-time position from like as soon as I could in terms of getting a full-time position, and then did a postdoc. What was shocking to me was how many people that haven't done a postdoc. Now, yes, you can say all the benefits of, what's good about doing a postdoc and this, that. They're going to train you. So what you'll come to find out is the people that they get hired, they were like maybe hired a year out from even graduating with their PhD. So that was been nice to been graduating, like have a job a year out before defending. You talking about what stress would be off of you. You have your full-time position a year before even writing your dissertation, before defending your dissertation, but you know what's coming next. I mean, that's like really coasting downhill. So as far as a postdoc, it's not a requirement, is what I want to tell you. A lot of times, and the reason why they don't want you to have done a postdoc is the training that they want to give you is they want you to have that baseline from the PhD and then come in. Sometimes the postdoc, they got to basically retrain you. They don't want you to have taken on, in their words, too many bad habits or whatever. Because once you start learning, going this, now it's like, okay, now we got to reteach you what we want you to learn. So no, if you don't have to, don't think, oh, I'm not ready yet, so I need to go do a postdoc first. Yeah. Plus, the other thing that I do want you to keep in mind, positions are not like once you start going through school and stuff, you're like, oh, there's so many colleges I can apply to for undergrad. There's so many colleges I can apply to for graduate school. That position that's open this year, once you start your postdoc, that position's gone. So I'm just saying, don't think that, oh, there'll be a position next year. I'm just gonna go do a postdoc for about, a year, 2 years, then I'll go apply. That position will not be there. So it's not a guarantee that they're going to have 3 openings next year because they had 3 openings last year. That's something else that I need to make sure I say.
And I agree with James for that last part for sure. Like, this is not like apartment hunting, and I'm going through that right now as I move to New York. Those positions, they might be there. And if you see it and you're interested, go ahead and reach out about it. Like, I think there's someone else that asked the question earlier, but to me, I don't feel like it's too early. If you're looking out like a year or two, that's kind of what I did. You know, when I was at the conference, I had my resume uploaded and there were several companies that were saying, hey, you know, I see that you're about to graduate. Are you interested in a full-time? Can we tell you about our opportunities? And I said, well, yes, you can. Absolutely. You know, and before like a year and some change before I defended, I had over 5 different offers that I can choose from. And it's a great position to be in. But in terms of whether you need to do a postdoc, I think it kind of just, it depends. It depends on you. I know for me, I mean, I had like a full-time in industry, a postdoc in industry, academic postdoc, another academic postdoc in Kentucky with muscle and metabolism. So it, for me, I decided that I wanted to do one because I knew, even though I was medicinal chemistry major in pharmacy, a lot of my work was in biochem and toxicology, but it just so happened that I had a postdoc advisor that was interested in allowing me to learn more of the synthetic chemistry that I was interested in. Like that wasn't, organic chemistry wasn't my trade by training at all, but I had a postdoc mentor that was willing to train me on that. And I'm like, yes. So, and especially in a place like Boston, I knew I can make a lot of different connections, network, big pharmas, a lot of different things out there. So I leveraged a lot of the opportunities there. And I thought it would be great for me to do that. And then also I knew because in the area, there were also a lot of different pharma companies that were along that Northeast coast that I could tap into, or people I've been networking with that can tell me about some of the positions. So for me, I did it out of strategy. You don't have to, but there are some companies that prefer you to have a postdoc. It's not every company. I think it really depends on the position. It depends on what you're looking for. Even in the role that I'm in now in program management, there are others that were hired out of their PhD. And but you know, because they didn't have a postdoc, they were still able to get in. They were able to get a role. It may be like a step or two lower in this case, but that's okay. Like, you know, it kind of depends on the position. So I don't take back the postdoc. I think it was great for me. I had a chance to use that time in my postdoc to explore a lot of different careers and consulting and all these things before I got here. So I can kind of do my research, learn the synthetic chemistry, get myself into pharma with like my little toe for a second. And then I got to like push through with that. And I'm like, yeah, I helped to work with Genentech and I've been consulting with Harvard and I'm doing this. So boom, I'm very, very interested. I know this is like more so the field that I'm interested in. I've had a chance to look through different careers and this is where I absolutely want to be. So I think because the training and having a chance to be exposed to other things, if you work your postdoc correctly, you can get a lot more out of it, not just research, but just life-wise too.
Yeah, I think, so I didn't do a postdoc, but I want to add to something that Victoria and James touched on. I don't think it's ever too early to look for a job or even actively look for a job. I think once you start your master's, your PhD, I think if you have an idea, if you know that you want to go to industry, you should start tailoring your experience for that. So what I mean by that, I know there's a lot of pharma companies that do like summer internships or even co-ops for third, fourth, and fifth years. If you start that process too late, you may miss that window and miss a big opportunity to do a co-op or do an internship. So I would say if you're thinking about going into industry and you know exactly the type of industry you want to go into, start reaching out to those people, reach out to those companies, see what sort of opportunities they have for bachelor's, master's, or PhD students, so that you can start getting those experiences, so that you can be one of those people who have an offer a year before you're ready to finish. I think it's never too late to start looking for a job during your schooling. Never too early, sorry. So could be too late, never too early. No, never too late. Okay.
Okay, is it my turn?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Okay. Isaiah asks, well, thank you for all your responses, by the way. So when making career changes within a company, do you have to apply as if you're a new hire, or is it less formal? I guess within a company. So I guess Kevin, you want to start?
It's hard to say. I imagine every company has different practices. But for my company, it was just click a few buttons because they have all your profile on file anyway. So you don't have to go through the 10 pages of re-uploading your like CV and things like that. Yeah, once you like submit it through their system, the interview process is very much similar. But the actual application process could vary. It's hard to say. I don't, because I'm not sure how other companies do it, but I can't imagine they'll make you go through the same thing as you're like a fresh, like outside hire, external hire, sorry.
I can tell you, at least at Merck, it's partly the same. Some of the stuff like Kevin was saying was the easier. Like you're in the system, but as far as like the applying, so for a scientist, you're gonna have to give a presentation, right? So they still will make you like it's an interesting thing. They still make you apply and give a presentation, and they'll make you do like you cannot present like covered material. So the same, so you don't get that advantage that someone else would have. Now it's different if it was for internal applicants. So if there was like for competing against people externally as well, what they would ask you to do is get a presentation that's also been cleared. So what you might not know is we have to get presentations cleared before we go present our work anywhere. So you can't just take something that you were working on yesterday. It has to go through this whole process of getting cleared. But something that also is good too, though, they don't tell everybody that you're applying for it. So let's say, you're gonna go apply for a role and you want to apply and then you don't get it. And like, James didn't get that role. No, no, no. They don't even know that. So the nicer part is like you don't have like the announcements that, hey, James is giving a seminar for his talk or whatever. They kind of have a little bit more closed door for you. So you go through most of the process, but some of the process you don't have to go through as terms of like giving a presentation in front of everybody. You might just give a presentation in front of that panel, and it's kept confidential that you are applying for a new position. So I think that's one of the even nicer part about it in terms of like you going through the system is that everybody in the department didn't know that you applying for something. They'll know like once you give a notice that you're joining another group or something like that.
I have a quick question, James. Are you required to tell your manager that you're interviewing for an internal role?
No, sir.
Oh, because we are.
Yeah, we are too.
But
they'll come back to the manager about like getting
Right.
like some feedback about your performance or how well you're working with others. Like at least from what I've noticed, our candidates, they also have to do a presentation. Like there were several that were internal that were applying for some positions, and they would give the presentation to our department. 45-minute talk, no matter what position it is, like senior project manager and above, like you'll do your 45-minute talk, 15 minutes for questions, but people are going to chime in and ask questions in the middle anyways. And then you'll still walk through and have like your interview with like 15 people. It's like a 2-day process. And sometimes they will go back and talk to your manager because they want to get some feedback about what was it like working with this individual, even though it is internal. But I think for that department, it's not like James said, they're not going to be like, hey, she's going to go apply for this role over there. That your manager will know on our end here at Regeneron, but it's not going to be announced. And if you don't get the position, it's not like, oh my God, what? But at least at Regeneron, if any of y'all are interested, let me know. Yes, I'm going to put those recruiting points out. But at least there, what I do like is that even if you don't get the position, if you're a great candidate, they're going to try to keep an eye out for you and see if there's another space elsewhere. Like I know there are several candidates that applied for my position, but thank the Lord. But they were great and they're outstanding, but they found another position that they were able to apply for, and they didn't have to go through such a lengthy process because they've already done it. And it turned out to be an amazing fit for them. So it all worked out.
Hey, Sharon and Carissa, can we touch on that a little bit more too? So, you hear something crazy about, oh, I didn't know you were interested in doing something like that unless you applied for the position. So part of what Kevin asked about, no, you don't have to tell your manager. It is good if they work with you because they might help put a word in to help create that opportunity. But at the same time, like whether it's good or bad, they might say, hey, you didn't get this position, but that role that you want, let's figure out how to create that space that you want to do. So you're interested in doing some more of this. Maybe we can do this over here. You don't have to go take on this role, but they will figure out the thing that I can say is they will try and figure out, like, if it's, especially if it's a means of keeping you within the company, they will try and figure out some things that you like to do. But also, as Victoria said, the rejection also is, hey, we have your name on the list, so we know that you were interested in this. It's just you didn't fit or you didn't meet this. So now they might think more about your development plan going forward. This is what you were missing. So we might need to put you in this executive program. So when that McKinsey stuff comes around, let's go send Victoria down here for a week, and they'll send you to the training to help fill the gaps on what you don't have, because they will hold it to where they haven't developed you in that way. So sorry, Lindsay, I didn't let you get down there.
Can I add one more thing? One, like, because you you touched on something. When you go to these trainings, it's like so important that you come back and put pressure on management, because they would pay for you to go do like the McKinsey trainings or executive leadership council kind of training. They'll send you there for a week, 4 days or whatever, but then you'll come back and you're in the same position. They probably won't give you any more responsibilities. So when they're willing to pay for you, have a meeting with your management beforehand, say, hey, I'm going to this training. And then afterward, this is what I learned and this is what I want to come implement in the department. If not, then you just did that for no reason. It won't help you. So yeah. Sorry.
No, that's great. That's good information. Don't let those opportunities waste. Lindsay, did you want to chime in on this issue of I lost my place about
Applying internally.
applying internally? Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't have, I'm literally, I think next week I'll come up on my 1-year work anniversary. So I haven't applied to any other positions within the company yet. But if it's anything like, for example, in Hampton Roads, we have like the hospital called Centera. And I have quite a few friends who work in various areas of Centera. And it's very hard. And I also have friends who want to get into the Centera system. And a lot of times they try to hire and transfer people internally over external applicants, just because, like I think Kevin mentioned, it's easier. You usually have all your information on file. They've already done the background checks. They already have like your work history verified and everything like that. So it's less of a risk to just kind of keep it internal. But I feel like that's kind of the only kind of analog I have to that, as I haven't gone through it personally myself.
Thank you. So the next question, actually, you all, a number of you have mentioned soft skills, and I want to be sure to give the audience an opportunity to know precisely what you're talking about. So when you talk about, and I'm going to start with you, Victoria, because I have a memory of you saying that and highlighting and putting on the front. So be specific. When you talk about soft skills, what are you talking about?
So I'm speaking about things such as communication. That's huge. You know, you're communicating even by going to present your work. You know, they're looking for someone that knows what they're talking about, but that can also explain it to a lay audience. And, you know, you're able to hone in on your craft and know that you understand what you're talking about if you can use lamer terms. So they want to make sure that you can explain that. Also, program management. You know, you're managing a lot of things within your project, whether it's organizing meetings, the way that you're contributing, the way that you're driving the project forward. Like there's so many different things you can pick up from there that speaks to how are you, or what's your process of organization? What's your managerial style? What's your mentoring style? Do you like to collaborate? Things like that, that I think we often overlook. Like you've been a student for so long, and yes, you have an advisor to report to, but that's the work that you're doing. You're driving that project. You're helping to come up with these questions or helping to solve these problems. And, you know, you've been helping to get the publications in. You're helping to make sure that you're seeing this grant from start to end. And these are things that I feel like a lot of us just don't give ourselves enough credit for. And when you look at these descriptions, they'll often tell you, like, we're looking for people that are great communicators, that like to collaborate, that are very knowledgeable about their field. And even things like cross training, that's something that's major, because within most departments, you're not only going to be working with just yourself, but you're collaborating. Like for me, I'm working with regulatory, and or with the legal department for patents and all these things. And so they're looking for someone that can be that team player, that can provide that teamwork aspect. You're looking for someone that's personable. You're looking for someone that wants to learn and that can learn and quickly learn. So these are, I feel like, a lot of things that people don't mention up front. But when you go to a presentation and you're about to give a talk and you're talking about, hey, during this interview, this is who I am and this is what I'm presenting, don't be afraid to mention those things, because this is what they're looking for. It's in the announcement most likely, but also it just shows a little bit about who you are and what's important to you.
Thank you, Nick. I think this is a question that probably everybody has a little bit different sense of what are the important soft skills to, highlight. Communication is important. Any others? How about if I go to you, James, so you're not last?
Thank you very much. Thank you. I saw Lindsay come off mute. I'm like, no, I was trying to hit the buzzer. No, I think the other thing that's important besides communication and what Victoria was talking about was speaking to non-technical people, right? Like they know that you know your science. So when Kevin was talking earlier about you are a subject matter expert, that is true. But when you come in the room, they want to know, like, can you present? So for us, you might have a chance to present to the CEO. So they need to know what you're talking about without you being more technical, talking about if you're coding, talking about Python, talking all these data analytics. At that level, I know you know the background, but can you show that you know this? The other part is sometimes we get caught that we are scientists and we think I'm going to go work in this silo, but they're not hiring you just to go in a room and work and then come back. You spend a lot of time presenting with the team. And so besides community, when you talk about communicating this, can you influence people? So influence people on the decisions that they're going to make, whether it's the next experiment, whether it's the next activity that we're going to do. So how are you in terms of influencing, convincing people in a way it's not just talking numbers and data, but how can you get along with them? So that's really important. And I'll leave something for the others to answer.
Were you getting ready to say something, Lindsay?
Yeah, so I have two things I kind of want to mention. One of the, I guess, soft skills that I've been told in the past have been kind of my strong suit has been adaptability. In my previous job, I worked in about 10 different projects in US, Mexico, Iraq, France, UK, all over the place. And so being able to adapt to your work environment, adapt to different types of people, different cultures, different languages, and still be able to get the work done and be continuous learning as well. That I feel like has been one of the strongest points that I've had to offer to, like, when I was doing the job hunt, is being able to adapt to new industries, new countries, new places, and things like that. So having that adaptability I feel like is a really, really strong suit to have. And I felt like that's been really helpful in my career development. Another thing that I also, I think Victoria also mentioned it, is that willingness to learn. I remember one of the questions I asked to every single person that interviewed me at BMS was, for somebody in this role, what trait do you think would be most important for them to be successful in your eyes? And every single one of them said a willingness to learn. And I feel like if you are open to that, that can just completely broaden your horizons. And it can bring so much potential for not only your development, but also your growth. So adaptability, willingness to learn. I feel like those are two very important soft skills that have helped me thus far.
That's great. So Kevin, what soft skills do you want to make sure that we have on our radar?
I think it's going back to the communications piece. I put it in the chat, this idea of having an executive presence. So basically what that means is how you present yourself, like James was mentioning, in front of, like, top leaders who don't know the technical jargon or technical things, right? I think as scientists, we're used to putting together 50 slide decks and going through them. But sometimes, you don't have 30 minutes to get a point across. Sometimes you only have 5. So really honing in that skill, practicing your elevator pitch, which is really important. Knowing how to, condense 30 slide worth of information into one slide. And it's something that I continuously work on. I work on that every day. And if you have that skill going into the workforce, then you'll have a leg up for sure.
So none of you mentioned, well, I shouldn't say it like this. Listening to you, there was a lot of focus on being able to talk and being able to communicate orally. What about in writing? Is that important?
I think writing is always important.
Yeah,
I think,
no matter what.
yeah, I think as early as you can, start writing. Whether that's publications, whether that's, not non-technical type writing. There's a lot of forums nowadays online. You can have like a free Medium account. Just start writing. Like, really practice it, because that is a skill that it will always be around and always be helpful.
Thanks.
But sharing something that when Lindsay pointed out, since it's us talking about like how it comes about us getting the job, I know Victoria mentioned it earlier about like, if you work here and they have de-risk, one of the things that they concern is like, you get a question like, hey, how would you work in this environment? They're worried about, how you would go. But for the majority of folks in there, you're going to go to a company, you're going to be isolated. But by this time, you're kind of used to being like what Victoria mentioned about at University of Iowa, is like a handful. So, but it also needs to come off in both your interview and stuff of not, oh, they will actually, do you think you'll be comfortable here? And you're like, what do you mean, will I be comfortable? Right. And it's like, yeah, the seat's still okay. But they're asking you that. So as Lindsay was pointing out, right, like for us, right, hey, you're going to come to a company that is all across the world and you can thrive in this environment and that environment. Then they say, okay, you're going to be fine. You mentioned I was coming from Arkansas. It's like, I'm going to come all the way to New Jersey. And like, it's like different because you're getting like, I don't like it here. But if you also show that, I think that's also important in terms of like that coming across on like how you work in other environments, that you've been exposed to other environments, and how you don't just be like, I have to only be around a certain group or I'm gonna not like it here. I think that also gets lost sometimes when we talk about what soft skills don't come off on our traits.
That's important.
Next, Isaiah Spate is showing out. He asks another question. It says, when making transitions, do you feel like there's a loss of community when making those changes? How do you find your community?
So for me, I've had a chance to I guess live and work in different areas, like whether it's like from the South, whether it's to the Midwest, and then to the Northeast, mini city, to now a bigger city. And one of the things for me that I always try to do is try to create or find some type of community that I resonate with. Like, at least with Regeneron, I was already introduced to like several of the affinity groups that are focused on like those that are demographically underrepresented in STEM, or that are Black, like Black ERG, or those that are interested in pushing diversity forward in the company through different areas like business development, through management, through all aspects, volunteerism. But then also for me, what helped me too is, at least when I got to Iowa, I mean, I didn't know who I was going to meet. I really didn't know it was going to be any of us out there. And so I said, I knew I wanted to look for a NOBCChE chapter for one. And to my surprise, they actually had one. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll be able to meet some other people. But then in an industry setting, same way for that, I was luckily introduced to several people that were already members, and they kind of brought me in and they told me, hey, we have these different affinity groups that, would you be interested? Or even outside of that, I found different programs that were within the community virtually for now till I move, that I'd be interested in joining. And I feel like they've really helped me to transition, like at least from that mindset of being in academia to industry, like people that I can talk to that can tell me about their journey, or what are some tidbits that can help me be successful where I am. But then also, again, being a part of panels like these for communities, I felt like when I was a part of these panels or on the other side asking questions, it helped me to form connections with other people, like Lindsay, like we had just connected like through here, and I'm just like, oh, she's gonna be in New York, hey. And that's somebody else that I was able to connect to just right there. And of course, several people are in the Northeast. I will be seeing y'all when I get there. But it's things like that, not being afraid to reach out so that, yes, NSU stand up. Kevin, no, that's not how you say it. But not being afraid to reach out and to say, hey, I'm interested in meeting other people or getting myself out there, being more social, whether it's in STEM or whatnot, has really helped me.
Sorry.
I definitely agree. So like I said, I got the job through NOBCChE, so I met a lot of the, you know, the Black employees and reps from BMS through there, and the person who kind of helped me find this position is another Black individual. And as I think my second day here at the job, he sent me an email saying, hey, these are a list of all the Black folks that you should know. And so he like reach out to them, you know, like schedule a one-on-one just to talk, and just having that kind of openness with people who look like me. In my old job, surprisingly, not a lot of folks look like me. I was very much like the only one a lot of times. And so as soon as I got here, we have like a PBRG called BOLD for Black Organizational Leadership and Development. Kevin is also quite involved with that. And so he was one of the people who was on that list of the Black folks I should know. So I was able to connect with everyone and have the sense of community in that way. And having, again, it makes such a huge difference having people who look like you in like leadership positions, who are doing great for, you know, the community, who are doing great for the family, doing great for the company and everything like that, that you can look up to, that you can network with, that you can channel for mentorships and things like that. So I think it's just a matter of, you know, you being able to make those connections, and then also help those to help you facilitate those connections as well.
Kevin, James, any?
I have nothing to add to that. I think everything was said.
All right, that's good. So actually it's almost 4:20, and I don't want us to run out of time. I thank the audience so much for making this vibrant with your questions, but I want to be sure we give the panel an opportunity to give advice for people who are contemplating a transition. And so I want to ask you 2 questions put together, and then if after this we can come back to the audience questions if there's time. So how do you recommend people think through the decision to make a change? How do you in particular make a distinction between, is it time to, you know, dig in and be persevering, or is it time to move on? And then the other, and I think your experience, I'm going to ask you to start, Lindsay, because I think your experience with that position that you weren't that happy in might give you some insight into thinking through that. And then also, if the transition isn't my choice, right? How do you give me some advice to work through it? I don't want to make this transition, but I have to. So I'll put those 2 together and ask you to start, Lindsay, with first of all, making the choice. Is it time to go? And if you're being forced to go, how do you make the best of it?
So I'm in a interesting position. So I originally left my last job because I was laid off due to a project downturn. And it was, you know, right before Christmas time. I remember I wasn't notified of this. It wasn't like sometimes you hear through the grapevine, there's a bunch of layoffs coming, but this was completely out of the blue. And this was like my first job out of school, and I was feeling crushed, like, oh my gosh, I failed, you know? And so I guess it's kind of like the transition of it being like not really being my choice as well, because it wasn't, I was unhappy with my previous job, but I wasn't unhappy enough to leave it voluntarily. But then I was kind of forced to, because, you know, and I kind of took that opportunity as like, okay, well, now that I'm out, I don't want to go back in. I want to find something different. And I think that's one of the great things about having a degree like chemical engineering. It's very robust, you know, it's very versatile. You can kind of go to a lot of different fields. And so having that like I didn't really have the choice of being like, is it time to change fields? It's like, yes, it is time. And thankfully, you know, by taking that year off and reconnecting with my family and my friends and reconnecting with myself, honestly, that gave me such a good opportunity to really figure out what was important to me. What was I interested in? Where do I like what do I think my purpose, quote unquote, in life was? And you know, I was part of this like development program for, so it was supposed to be for students, but I somehow got into it as well. And it kind of helped me focus on like my core values, what I think my purpose, like why was I put on this earth? And my purpose, I've discovered, was to use science to better the world. That's what I wanted to do. And by understanding that's what I felt was important, that's what I sought in the job hunt. And so this transition in terms, it wasn't very hard in terms of getting the right mindset to make this transition, because again, it wasn't really my choice, but I have absolutely zero regrets about, you know, where I ended up. So I think it's just a really important thing to make sure that you understand yourself and you understand what you want. And that'll make the transition much smoother for you.
Okay. Kevin, you've gone later in the past few questions, so I want to toss it to you next so you get to go earlier this time.
Yeah, I think Lindsay mentioned it. I think just understanding your purpose. You know, no job is going to be perfect. Wherever you go, there's going to be some hiccups. There's going to be something about that role that you don't like. But if you focus on your purpose and, you know, vocation, right? I think that's another word that a lot of people like to use. Then, you know, your body won't lie to you. Like, you know, when you're in a place that you need to be in, and sometimes that runs its course. Sometimes it could be in 3 years, 5 years, 20 years, and you just have to leave. I think your body will tell you when it's time to go. So yeah, I think just recognizing your purpose, recognizing how you like to work, what, you know, think about your work-life balance. Does your job offer you the work-life balance that you feel that you need? Sometimes it can be a role that, you know, it's very lucrative, but you have to work 80 hours a week. You know, does that make sense for you where you are in your life? Some people say yes, some people will say no. So just thinking about things like that, and don't be afraid to leap. You know, and don't be afraid to even take a sidestep. You know, not every change is going to be a promotion. Sometimes you need to, you know, step to the side to learn certain skills to for you to get to where, you know, you ultimately want to be. So the advice I would give people, and then what I would tell my younger self, is just don't be afraid. If there's an opportunity that looks interesting, just explore it. You know, keep your head up. It's okay to have a conversation. Doesn't mean you're gonna, you know, switch jobs every 6 months, but definitely keep your eyes and mind open, because, you know, every time you leave a department or leave a job, they're gonna replace you. So they don't worry, they won't feel bad for you leaving. So if you just take that same mindset, I think making decisions to switch becomes much easier.
James, what about you? What do you think in terms of making that decision between time to stay, time to go,
Yeah,
and
I
if it's
think
not?
I think actually right now it's like I'm at the opposite. So what you've seen people like over the past year talking about, oh, this is the year of the great resignation. So within our group and other places, we've had like a lot of moving chairs and, you know, people going. So people were like start sitting back and say, what, I need to reassess my situation as well. So you start reassessing and thinking like, okay, is this the right situation for me? Because everybody's leaving for multiple reasons. So you sit back and you start looking and thinking like, okay, do I want, am I getting what I want? And exactly on the checklist that Lindsay and Kevin were mentioning, right? Like, what do I want out of this? And am I getting here? And you can look, you can go look and you can explore and you can, the nice part that I'm in a great position of is I have my position. So it wasn't like, you know, when I was a postdoc, you said, why were you making this? Because I knew I had 6 months left to that fund and was running out. And it's like, what you gonna do then? Now I'm in a position where I'm at comfortable in my position. I can go look and see, do I want to go look at something else, and will it basically has to beat what I'm currently at, right? Like I'm happy in my position, so do I want to do this, this, or this? And if it's not really going to change things, then hey, I can stay put. But instead of just thinking about, oh, I have to leave, it is you have a good chance of like assessing what you want to do. So that's where I'm at in terms of like over this past year. And I know a lot of people have been similar, right? Having an opportunity to assess and see what's there, and then taking advantage of right now, there are so many opportunities. So again, you're not in that position of, hey, it's not by choice. But now it's like, okay, when I have a little bit more control, I'm empowered to what I want to do in that way. So
Victoria?
I mean, I definitely agree with that, with what everyone else said. It kind of really depends on what, what you're interested in, what you're passionate about. Are you happy ultimately where you are, or are you hoping to be someplace else? Is there something else in the back of your mind that you're curious about? And to me, if you have that opportunity to do it, I would just take that chance and go apply and just see what happens. I know for me, my path has been pretty untraditional. I've jumped from here to there and there, and it's mainly just because I saw the opportunity and I seized it. And I said, you know what? Whether I try it and it isn't what I expected or not, I'm going to go try it anyways, and I can get it out the back of my mind. And so for me, I knew it was time to go for the postdoc, because honestly, I was tired of being broke in Boston. So I was ready. All my friends are talking about all these things that they're doing and blah, and I'm just like, can't go anywhere. So for me, that's me. And I'm like, I've been wanting to get into pharma, but the internship, it was nice, but I want something full time. So I'm like, I'm ready to get in there. I'm ready to contribute. I'm ready to help move these projects forward. It was something I was passionate about. So I connected with someone. They helped me get the position, and I was there. But even for advice for now, where you are, you can always still be on the hunt to look for, just to see what's out there. Whether, even if you're completely content where you are, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with seeing what else is out there, and if something else piques your interest and you have that capacity to do it, I would just try it. And also, just to piggyback off of what Kevin said, no position is going to have everything that you want in it. There's going to sometimes be times where you're like, I don't really want to do this. But if the good outweighs the bad, there are ways that you can leverage what you're doing within that company. And then you can also do stuff outside of that if that's going to help you feel fulfilled. So what are you passionate about, and what's going to fulfill you, and what makes you happy is key.
Thank you all for all of those responses. Carissa?
All right, well, I guess we have time for one last question. So I'll ask, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Anyone?
I answer no idea. No, just kidding. I can't tell you. My eyes will still be open, looking to what opportunities are there. So I couldn't tell you like in 5 years on how that would change. So jokes aside, I couldn't tell you in 5 years. So the answer would be happy in 5 years, but where it, I don't know. But happy, somewhere happy.
Yeah, I just started this position, so hopefully maybe in 5 years, if I'm still content with, where I'm working, like the role that I have and things like that, maybe progress from associate research scientist to just scientist. That would be pretty cool. But yeah, in terms of exactly where I'll be in 5 years, I have no idea as well. But hopefully it'll, have some growth and development there somewhere.
I'm sure you
Same for what Lindsay had also mentioned, just that I'm not exactly sure. Like, I just got here, but I mean, I could see a promotion or two, maybe three in the midst, what I would aim for, but also just leveraging, doing different things, like the things that I love to do, like doing panels or having a chance to mentor. These are all the things that I also like to leverage outside of that I just love to do. So doing things that make me happy, like Jane said, and going after anything and everything that I see that I want to go after, trying to be a mogul.
About 5 years, I guess, since my manager's not on the line, I could speak a little freely. Probably exploring new parts of the organization. I think like growing in our business analytics department. Probably moved 2 more times in 5 years, who knows? But I'm a naturally curious person, so really just exploring and doing more things outside of my job, being more involved in the community. I think that's really important. we had a window where the organization was really supporting of hiring Black people. So still putting pressure on my company to hold them to their words. So 5 years, hopefully I'll be in more of a leadership position to really impact that part of it.
That's really great. Thank you. So it's almost 4:30, so I don't want to let you all get away without. First of all, I did notice a question in the chat about making the decision to do academics versus versus industry. And I think it's the same for all of these transitions and decisions. If you think about what all of our panelists told us, they did their due diligence, they did research, they looked into these positions, and they talked to people. So they did research and investigation on multiple levels. So I think it's really important. What I'm taking away from this is how important it is to be open and explore, but also to be proactive. Don't sit back and wait, to reach out to people and get information from every avenue and channel that you can. And so that's a perfect segue for me to remind everybody that it was announced this morning that abstract submission for the 2022 NOBCChE National Conference in Orlando in September and I don't have the date right in front of me, but I think it's the 26th through the 28th, is available today. And so I want to encourage you to go to NOBCCchE.org and get the be sure to get that information and be sure to join us and do the networking that you heard about today that has been such a help to all of our panelists. I want to say a special thank you to each one of our panelists, to Victoria, to James, to Kevin, and to Lindsay. You really helped us and we really appreciate it. We want to thank everyone in the audience who joined us today and want to ask you to just keep your eye out and join us for the next time that there's a regional event brought to you by any of the 5 regions of NOBCChE, or when there's a national event. And we thank you for your time and look forward to seeing you on the next one.